inspiration for me is that initial spark that builds the enthusiasm. Like that's the thing that's like, fuck, I need more of that. And enough of that becomes a bit of a compulsion, whether that's listening to podcasts or whether that's a video or whatever it is that sparks that fire, whatever it is that gets that thing going, that gets you moving, gets you feeling, gets you thinking something about a positive shift in your life. Like that's the inspiration. That's what these calls are. That's what communicating with the group is. That's what finding that energy that you have to get out. That's inspiration. Like that's finding, and it comes from books, it comes from movies, it comes from fucking travel, it comes from conversations, it comes from all these things, but it doesn't come from scarcity. That's not inspiration, right? Like that's a bit more of a desperation that I have to get it so you don't. But I want pure inspiration that leads me toward light and leads me toward happiness and enthusiasm. I want to go toward the things that really set me up and set me on fire, the stuff that I need to be around more. The next thing I think about is the awareness. It's actually acknowledging that dream that you want to do it and start vocalizing it and start putting something down as where you'd like to go, and think about the awareness of where I'd like to be and how this goal operates. And what skills do I need to possess to properly accomplish that goal? And so, you know, if I want to start a podcast, right? Like the inspiration is I've listened to a show. I'd like to start a podcast. I'm aware I'd like to start a podcast. I keep thinking about it. I've come up with a name. I've come up with, you know, what the topic would be, what the direction I want to take the show. And then from there, it's like, okay, so let's record the first one. You know, what do we need to do that? We can get figuring out that like, okay, so for me to become a better podcaster, I'm going to have to take reps and do this public speaking thing, be able to speak, be able to communicate, be able to share ideas and translate the information that you would like to share through the podcast. And that's only going to come through the repetitions, right? And so once we have that awareness of what skills we need and what we should be doing and what we can be doing and how we can build and what those steps start to look like, then we can figure out what is our intention with this. And I say that figuring out your intention and not your expectation, right? Because your expectation is I'm going to host a podcast, get famous. When your intention is to share information that you care about, your intention is to create a show that you like to record. The intention is to speak to guests and learn something from them. The expectation isn't that. So as long as I can stay true to that intention and follow the steps of awareness that are going to get me there, then I want to do it. You know, making money, building a successful, famous podcast. If you want to do that, and that is your intention, there are steps there too, right? Like we can look at what popular subjects are. We can figure out the way to plan and itemize and build shows. We can figure out what guests we need to be getting in touch with. And we can start figuring out the process of doing that. It's still steps, but you have to be aware truly of what your intention is. Do you want to show that something you love to do, or do you want something that's going to make you famous and make you rich? Because these are very different things. They can overlap. That gets really tricky. It's really tricky. There's a lot of people out there who've made a lot of money who aren't fucking happy. That's not something I'm interested in at all. I'm not interested in sacrificing long-term satisfaction with my life. I'm not selling it. Again, I'm not selling the be happy today so that I can be happy later. I want to be stoked in both. And that's being involved in things that have a limitless progression to them while having a plan of how to execute it and being excited to do all those parts. And then the final part of this is really action. Like that's our final thing is the action is you starting to make decisions. And remember the intention. The expectation can lead us down a different path that can get really muddy and really cloudy with, I thought it should go this way. But if we stick with action and taking action, it's simply what's the next step? I have to do this. I have to get this part done. Stop looking at the 200 steps of what it is and start looking at what the next step is and just make that progress. Do the critical thing that helps you take the next step. That's it. Even if that is, I need to do research. I don't know what this cost. I need to get the El Camino taken care of so that can be my daily driver at some point later this year. I know that. I have a loose idea of what it costs, but that is an assumption. I have never spoke to a shop that's going to do the work and got a quote from them regarding time or money. And until that, I don't know shit. I have an educated guess, but I can't get mad when I actually find out. And so at some point, I'm going to have to start taking action and actually bring the car to a shop to get an estimate. And for me, I realize there's a lot of steps before I actually get to start doing it. Like there's probably 2 months worth of shit that I'll have to do with the El Camino before I can actually start getting it worked on. So why not start chipping away at those things too in any of the spare time I have? Do the research, look in, make some phone calls, go visit. You don't have to build momentum, right? Like you're understanding as much data as you can to make the better actions and make better decisions going forward. And I think using those four parts, right? Like those are the 4 parts that we can kind of use as the base to get anything done. And so again, that's going to be your inspiration, the awareness, your intention, and the action. That's the 4 steps to figuring it out. And it allow you to go back into inspiration. Look, I get inspired all the time to change work, and I get inspired on big scales, which is start an apparel company, right? And build this out and build my dream. That's one long timeline of a lot of actions and inspiration. But in the small runs, right? Like there's still inspiration that I get from a movie. There's inspiration I get from talking to people. There's inspiration I get from travel. And when I get that, I have to be aware of what it is there that I'm actually into so that I can translate that into something. And then remember again, the intention. What is it I'm trying to accomplish? I want to make better products that make my company better. That's it. They stay true to our word. They stay true to our vibe. They're clothes I want to make for me. And that was a rule from jump. And then action. I can start designing, I can start changing. And even in that, there's going to be small parts and different pieces of inspiration that are going to pop up and awareness. And I'm going to work through those stages. But those are the 4 stages that have been really critical in me being able to figure out what I want to do, how I want to do it, and what decisions I need to start fucking taking to get shit done. But without action, none of it fucking matters. And people can get tied up on that piece and get buried in it and be so fucking scared to take action, join a thing, start a thing, try new stuff, make new friends, go to a new place, try a new gym, any of that shit. People fucking falter on action all the fucking time because you have to physically do a thing. We're out of theoretical now. Taking action is critical, but you don't have to fucking balls to the walls and run it into the ground. Just take the first step, build some momentum and let that carry it. Know that you're doing it. Know that you're making progress. Instead of going into something like jujitsu or starting a business and say, it's going to do this by this date. Like that's fucking hard lines, blah, blah, blah. When the reality is I want to grow a business, right? And if I can stay in that growth mindset, instead of chasing an expectation, I stay excited, and an excited, happy me is going to do better work. I like pressure and I like being able to do that, but I like doing it about things I give a fuck about the outcome. The businesses I run, the people I'm around. Like I'll fucking do any of the work as long as it fits into that spectrum of shit I care about. I don't want to do it for someone else. And I didn't find it very sustainable to pretend that I would.